So for those of you new to the podcast, I have for years been doing the podcast as kind of my full-time primary thing, and I have dipped into savings. I have cashed out Bitcoin, cashed out retirement accounts, but it has not yet become a full-time income. I say yet. So I'm picking up some extra work, professional gunfighting, as you might imagine, making that mercenary money to stack it up. But the goal is still, God willing, to make this the full-time income. So you're going to hear some more recycled content, some more tactical reload content. I thought of something new for this week, the 20th through the 25th. Go to the Patreon page if you've never been there. Sign up as a free patron. There's a thing to sign up for as a free patron. Now, a lot of that content usually I put out for paid members. But this week, if you're listening to this when it comes out, or in the future, you can go back and listen to this content. The content coming out from the 20th to the 25th every day. There will be a Patreon page exclusive content episode only on Patreon. You can sign up for free. I mean, if you want to sign up as a Patreon member, you've been thinking about it anyway, go ahead. But just to give you a little taste of what Patreon gets, you can sign up as a free member and get that content. So scroll down, hit the link, and get Patreon only content that won't come out on the regular podcast. To give you an idea of things coming out for the Patreon page only that week, End of the World 2024 episode. Water is not everywhere. Practical Tactical Fashion Part 1. Practical Tactical Fashion Footwear. Anyway, that's some content that'll be coming out on Patreon. Patreon only. So go to the Patreon page and sign up. Sign up as a member, check out the content that's only there, and enjoy this tactical reload. So, Tribe, this one was a request from Benjamin, and I'm not sure that I would do it justice doing a whole episode on it, but I wanted to talk about it, not just for Benjamin, because I think there's a deeper philosophy here, but it sounds like a simple question. And it's the more I think about it, the more complex it really is. Now I could just pick one, but I'll read you the question, then I'll get into why I think it's a little bit deeper than... Anyway, thoughts on if you had to pick a caliber and gun for each game, small, medium, large, and dangerous game, which would they be? Basically like a hunting battery. Thanks. God bless you. Well, God bless you, sir. I appreciate that. So here is the deal. If you're talking about just straight ballistically, right? If you want to nerd out, here's an example. Ballistically, the 7mm 08 is superior in almost every way to the 308, right? You can get similar bullet weights, higher ballistics coefficient, higher sectional density. It's a better balance, I think, for that amount of powder for 7mm. It's a fantastically well-balanced cartridge. It's one of the most well-balanced, good, all-around big game hunting cartridges in the world, 7mm 08. I own 0 7mm 08s. I own several 308s. Because 308 is pretty good ballistically, and it's way more available, and it will do like 90% of what you ever need to do in hunting. And I'll illustrate this with another real-world example. For me, when I was younger, I was into a little bit more of these hotter calibers and these like ballistically superior calibers. There was a time when I had this is a gun that I kind of regret selling because it was just a beautiful gun and it shot so good, but I'm not a collector. And this is a big reason why I got rid of it. I had a old Ruger Tang Safety 22-250. And they say a lot of those guns weren't accurate. That one I had was a TAC driver. It was crazy accurate. 22-250. Great gun. It's a great caliber. And that was at a time where I was doing quite a bit of coyote hunting and a lot of prairie dog hunting. A lot of reloading. And it was better ballistically in almost every way. But I got rid of it and still kept 223s/5.56s. Is it better ballistically? Yeah, but it'll do 90% of what I want it to do, right? If I'm shooting a prairie dog, does it really matter that I shot it with a 223 or a 22-250? Even though the 22-250 is better ballistically, and it's way cheaper and easier to practice with. Even reloading, just because at the time I could just get all kinds of brass because it's way more common. Even if you're talking about affordability in reloading, it was much more affordable to get 223 than 22-250. And reloading makes it way cheaper than it is buying both. But even with reloading, 223 5.56 was just more common. So, and when I was younger, I thought that was important. When I was younger, one of my very first deer rifles I saved up and bought was a 7mm Remington mag. I own exactly 0 7mm Remington mags now, although on paper, they are better than a 308 in almost every possible conceivable way for hunting big game. Until you actually shoot them, and shoot them quite a bit. And that's kind of the major overarching philosophy here, is that I have seen the more hunting that I've done in my life, and being a professional big game hunter and guide, and tactical situations certainly play into that. It's so much more important that you actually get out and shoot and practice with your gun than your gun looks 10% ballistically better on paper or 25% ballistically better on paper. It's so much more important that you practice with it and train with it and get out and shoot standing, kneeling, sitting prone, off a log, off your pack. It's so exponentially more important than what's the difference in a max point blank range in a 308 and a 300 Win Mag? 30, 40 yards? It's not a lot. And I've noticed it's not just with me. I've noticed just anecdotally, as a professional guide, you are around other professional guides. I saw exactly 0 hot new calibers. I saw exactly 0 Magnum calibers in any of the guides, even though we hunted stuff up into and including American bison. It's kind of superfluous. And I think it's so much more important that you know your rifle, you train. That is exponentially so much more important. And that's only a small part of hunting. The bigger part of hunting is fieldcraft, reading the wind, walking quietly, being patient, right? Not winding yourself, knowing which way to approach game, knowing game habits. All that stuff is more important than the rifle, and exponentially more important than and when you get down to shooting, which is a small part of hunting, but a part that I really love about hunting, it's almost, I'm not going to say never, but it's almost never that there's a difference in the outcome of the hunt between something as pedestrian and vanilla as 308 versus 300 Win Mag. And I think for the vast majority of things, not that I'm a big fan of the 308 because this is 308, I'm a big fan of the 308 because economy of scale. It's common, it might be boring, but it works, it's reliable, it's readily available. I think 308 and or 30-06 will do 90%. And you might even say 100% with the 30-06 because the 30-06 has, except for like a blue whale, right? As far as animals that you readily hunt, has killed pretty much anything on the planet. Plenty of hunters have gone to Africa and taken pretty much everything with a 30-06. The 06 does have a little bit bigger powder reservoir, and it does handle bigger, heavier bullets better if you're talking about dangerous game, which was one of the things in the question. But like when I went and lived in Alaska and was in very high population brown bear country, and I'm still in northern Idaho, which is grizzly bear country, right? They're arguably much better calibers for grizzly bear. And yeah, and if I was guiding for grizzly bear and actually hunting grizzly bear, that's one thing. But I still think you're better off with the rifle you're going to practice with. And I'm just not going to practice with a 458 lot. Ballistically, so I don't know if Benjamin was asking ballistically on paper, but that has very little real-world effect. Ballistically on paper, right, the 7 SAUM is a beautiful cartridge. I don't own a 7 SAUM. I don't have any plans to own a 7 SAUM, short action ultra mag, or a 7 RUM, right? I have no desire to own those because I'm not going to practice with them. One, because they're painful in a hunting weight rifle. That's a big one. So I might go out and put 1 or 2 rounds in to confirm 0, but I'm not going to go out and shoot 20, 30 rounds like I will with a box of 308 because it's readily available and affordable. So even though ballistically, yeah, the 7 SAUM is better in almost every way ballistically than something very pedestrian like a 308. The 308 will kill pretty much anything you want it to, shy of dangerous game, and the 30-06 will do that. Plenty. And in fact, when I was looking at the Alaska rifle, talking about professionals, not that I knew personally, but when I looked at what most professional guides used in Alaska, it was 30-06. It wasn't one of these fancy calibers. It wasn't a Magnum. It was 30-06 of Alaska and Canadian guides. The most common 30-06. There were some 308s. There were some other stuff. I think there even might have been some 7 mags, but the 7 mags is pretty small on the Magnum scale. But you get the idea. The most common was 30-06. And that's talking Alaska and Canada. If you're talking lower 48, 308 will do most of what you want it to do. And it's not because 308 is like some secret sauce caliber. It's not. It's a very vanilla caliber, but it's capable. And if you're better off with a mediocre vanilla ballistic round that you're going to shoot and practice with. And if you go super small, like varmint hunting, which I would consider a specialty thing, go 223 for the same reasons. It's cheap and easily available. But even if you talk up into coyotes, are there better coyote, quote-unquote, coyote rounds? Yeah, but you're probably better off shooting a coyote with the 308 that you practice with a lot. Are there better arguable pronghorn calibers than 308? Yeah, but you're probably better off. In fact, the only pronghorn I've shot with a 308. They're not as easy to get tags for. But you're better off with the gun that you shoot a lot and train with a lot than some whiz-bang caliber that you're not going to shoot and train with. You know, sure, I would say, a 257 Weatherby mag on paper is maybe the quintessential pronghorn cartridge. Again, I don't own a 257 Weatherby mag. I don't plan on owning a 257 Weatherby mag. Go look at what a box of 257 Weatherby mag costs if you can find it. You probably have to special order it. And people will often rebuttal, well, how many rounds are you going to shoot in hunting? Well, hopefully not very many. But that probably comes from people that don't train. If you are training with the rifle you're hunting with, you're going to shoot quite a bit. Unless you're shooting a big Magnum expensive caliber. Then you're probably not going to train very much, in which case you're probably not going to do as well. So, I know it sounded like a simple question, and I'll try and give you a simple answer here, but I kind of wanted to explain that because I thought it deserved the explanation. I didn't want Benjamin to think that I was just shrugging him off, and I wanted to kind of explain that because he's probably not the only one thinking about it. You're talking about a really good crossover caliber between... Well, let's start with varmints. If you're talking about just straight varmint hunting, rock chucks, woodchucks, prairie dogs, 223, 5.56. It'll do a lot of meat damage, but they're not food. You're not shooting them to eat them. You're shooting them to eradicate them. If you're talking about really small game like quails, doves, pheasants, most of that is going to be dictated by your local laws. They're going to be dictated that you have to probably use a shotgun for most of that stuff. And obviously a rimfire 22 long rifle belongs in any basic battery. But you got 223 that covers up to, and you can definitely take coyotes with 223. I definitely have. But if you want to bridge the gap a little bit better between what I would call medium-sized game, which for the largest thing most people are going to shoot because they live east of the Mississippi, you're talking a decent deer round and coyote round, 243 is beautiful. It's beautiful. It's very, very common. It's not as common as a 308, so I would say probably just step up to the 308 because do you need a 308 to shoot coyotes? No, but you're probably better off with the 308 that you train with, again. But 243, as far as ballistics and commonality, it's pretty good. And I've killed a lot of animals with 243, mostly because that's what I had. That is a beautiful cartridge. What's also real common and bridges that gap between like medium-sized game and varmints like coyotes up to white-tailed deer and stuff like that. 6.5 Creedmoor, it's a great cartridge. I'm not a big fan of the super long-range hunting. I'm just not, and I've probably covered that before, but 6.5 Creedmoor ballistically is a good round. I would say it's adequate for, it's definitely plenty for medium game. And again, 308 does all that stuff too. 308 is by far probably more common than all of these. 308 is definitely big enough for most deer and elk hunting. You might argue with that, some people might argue with that, but there are, I don't know, an innumerable number of elk that have been taken with 308. 308 really shines in the 150 and 168 grain bullet weight range. If you start getting heavier bullets, you start eating into that powder capacity, which doesn't have a lot to spare anyway. You start getting into heavier bullets, let's say 180 grain to 220 grain, then your 30-06 starts to shine. And your 30-06 will scale down as well. It'll go down to 110 grain up to 220 grain. It is, as far as ballistics go, it is the most versatile of the cartridges, by far 30-06, but it's not as available or as affordable as 308. There's also not nearly as many rifles chambered in it. But if you want a good medium and large game caliber, the most flexible, you're talking up into really big black bears, like Alberta black bears and really big elk and moose and things like that. 308 will do it, but 30-06 will do it a little bit better. If you talk about dangerous game, again, the heavy weighted bullets, 30-06. And keep in mind, I have zero experience. I do have quite a bit of experience hunting exotic animals, but no dangerous African game. I have never been to Africa to hunt dangerous African game. I've never hunted hippo, I've never hunted rhino, I've never hunted lions, so I'm not going to pretend like I know what I'm talking about there. I know pretty much all those species can be killed with a 30-06, but if you're exclusively hunting them, you might want to go bigger. But I will only advise that if you were pretty competent with other calibers first, because there is a technique to shooting magnums. Now, if we're talking about hunting rifles, and we're just talking about hunting, we're not talking about any tactical crossover, just hunting, bolt action, and not because of the accuracy. In fact, I own a couple of bolt action 308s, and the most accurate 308 I have is a semi-auto. My Scar will put them in one hole. My bolt actions will shoot an inch or just under. My Scar will put them in one big hole. Crazy accurate. But the bolt action is really good for hunting because it's sleek. It can generally be made quite a bit lighter, sleeker, handier. It's got a rugged, robust action. I mean, you can crush ice with it if you have to. Just bolt action has been a standard for a long time in hunting, and there's a lot of good reasons why. And not, I think, a big misconception is because they're more accurate. 20, 30 years ago, yeah, they were probably some of the most accurate compared to semi-autos, but today, I don't know that that's even the case. And guns have gotten so accurate that I don't even know that it's much of a consideration. But because they're a rugged, reliable action, good in adverse conditions, and they're very sleek. Like, even if they weigh similar, which they probably don't, the bolt action's probably lighter, or can be made quite a bit lighter, but it's also sleeker. If you're, trying to crawl up a creek bank choked full of willows, or crawl through choke cherries on the side of a mountain without making noise, that sleek action makes a difference. Bolt action. I've said before, I prefer controlled round feed. For today, rifles on the market, a Kimber. Kimber makes some of the best. They're not budget rifles, but they're not crazy expensive. The Winchester Model 70. For a while, they went to push feed, which I don't like those. I like controlled round feed. And that's just me. If you want to push feed, that's fine. I prefer controlled round feed. So you got to make sure, if I say Winchester Model 70, it's either a pre-64 or one of the more new versions. And I forget when they switched back. It might have been the early 2000s. But there was decades and decades where they made push feed rifles. And they still called them all the Winchester Model 70, which, I mean, they're Winchester. I guess they can call the rifle what they want. But now they are back to a controlled round feed. They're no longer made in America. I think their parts are made in Japan and assembled in Portugal, but they're fine rifles. So if you want a good modern American made one, go Kimber. If you want a good Winchester still makes them. They're not made in America, but a Winchester, and they're controlled round feed again. They're exquisite. Again, if you want a good hunting rifle, one of those Kimbers or a Winchester Model 70 and 308 or 30-06, right? If you want to step down and get a good, it'll handle any deer in North America, right? 243 is great for deer as long as you're not ridiculous with your bullet choice. It's a fantastic deer caliber. Want to step down a little bit to 243. You're probably paying about as much for 243 or more than you are for 308, but if you want to and you want a good crossover between that and varmints, then 243. But really, again, a bolt action 308, 90% of what you want to do. If you want heavier bullets, like I would certainly hunt elk with 308 and have no issues with it. But I do think with a heavier, beefier bullet, with a 30-06, I will get more shot angle opportunities. I would take shots with a really heavy bulleted 06 on elk that I would not take with a 308. You know, with a good 180 grain monolithic, meaning solid copper 180 grain out of a 30-06, I have no problem taking a hard quartering to right straight in the shoulder shot on an elk. I don't know that I'd take that shot with a 308. I'd probably wait till he got a little bit more broadside. But the vast majority of shots with a 308, I'd no problem hunting elk. In fact, I've taken more elk with 243 than anything else, but I also am very picky about my shots, or at least I should be. Right? You're mostly limited to broadside shots for that. And you got to kind of understand the anatomy and where to aim and where not to aim and be able to actually call your shot. So anyway, that I would not recommend that for elk just because I've done it. But it goes back to that's the rifle that I shot the most and practiced with the most, so that's the rifle that I took, and I've never not put down an elk with it. And that goes to, is it a great ballistic performer on elk? No, absolutely not. It's a kind of a poor choice. But shot placement and being familiar with your weapon is exponentially more important. So, again, you're just talking deer and down. 243 is a great caliber, but really it's not going to give you anything that the 308 is going to give you unless, and this is a big reason I still like it, if you're running an ultralight rifle. But you're probably not. If you're running a standard weight rifle, let's say between 6 and 8 pounds, which is the vast majority of rifles, 308 recoil is going to be pretty mild anyway. I don't know that it'd be enough to worry about, and it's going to be more broad spectrum. It's going to be more readily available. It's going to be more affordable. It's going to scale up better. And again, does it really matter if you shot the coyote with a 308? Probably not. And if you want to go more towards the bigger end of that scale, 30-06. You're giving up a little bit of availability and affordability, but it's still really readily available and affordable compared to most other options. And again, bolt action, controlled round feed, which, again, Kimber if you want American made, and a Winchester Model 70 if you want a Winchester Model 70. They both basically share that same controlled round feed, 3-position safety, which I think is the best that I've ever used as far as practical hunting actions. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Thanks, Benjamin. I appreciate it. That said, when I was a younger man and I just wanted crazy ballistic stuff just for the heck of it, like a 22-250 or a 7 Rem mag, if that's where you're at and you want to spend the money on it, again, ballistically, there's a lot of really, really good calibers. But if you want my advice, which is what you asked for, you're better off with a common caliber that you're going to practice more with. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. Have a blessed day.